We got it coming out in January. Kind of this stuff, but in like a rainbow temple.
Can you explain?
Oh yeah, you should explain.
So we had some brainwave music stuff going on. Our alpha level was manipulating the expansiveness of the filtering, you could say,
Yeah, so
throughout the performance.
Like if you heard like really like high frequency stuff bloom out, it's like if the more concentrated we got in the alpha, like the more predominant alpha.
How do you control your alpha?
It's kind of like absorption and the activity you're doing, like focus.
Yeah, I mean, alpha waves are generally created when the brain is trying to block off some kind of activity. So when you close your eyes, you'll get this spike in alpha, and then when you open your eyes again, your alpha will lower again. So it's kind of like a blocking mechanism that your brain uses to conserve energy sometimes. But then when you meditate, your alpha just like skyrockets because your brain is kind of clearing out in a way. So it's kind of, that's like one of the easiest metrics to kind of learn how to perform or manipulate. So that's why we were using that. That's what you see here going on. Of course you don't see it moving now because we're not wearing the headset. So at the end we were trying to like consciously perform alpha. So I was kind of poking Max to get him to open his eyes so that the alpha would change.
You probably heard it be like less like cosmic. When I opened my eyes, it got more just like plain waveform. When our eyes were closed, it got kind of like more washy, like ocean sounding.
So that's what we were doing with these guys.
Awesome.
But you still have to map them, right? You still have to map.
We still have to map, that index. So that's all happening. That's happening through this,
Like custom
the
software.
synthesizer, the software and stuff. He did the mapping, so I couldn't explain. How exactly does the mapping work?
This level is like consumer EEG, so this is like the cutting edge consumer EEG hardware that's starting to hit the market now. And so we have 6 channels to play with. We don't have a lot of like focal precision to control, say like moving a square around. So you really have like 1 or 2D of usable information. So in this case, it maps to like the opening of a filter. So it's getting in all this like higher harmonic information when our alpha wave level is higher.
So it's like a low pass filter that
Well, no,
cut off
you kind
frequency
of
was
like
changing.
this was like smearing it out. So this was using like taking the simple signal, which is a bunch of sinusoids, like sine waves, real simple, and then as we got more focused in, it blooms it out into kind of like more like sideband harmonics. Like it's all like. And we're just using like this is like there's some like stuff being done through them like on the command line, but it's really just like Max MSP. So people probably used that before.
When you perform, do you plan a general
What's this
or
one
you
sort of?
freestyle?
We've always just improvised. I don't think we've ever planned any. Well, I was kind of telling him that I wanted to do this thing where we were just filtering at the end, so no fluting or anything, just having some kind of undulating ground tone and then having the filtering change based on the brain waves. But we didn't know when that was going to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of how we know each other. Is just like 10 years of like free improvisation experience and stuff. Just like different groups engaging that type of music.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask another question? No,
Uh-huh.
like a seminar. But
That's fine.
I'm very curious, like with that device, like it's very like cool making music, but what other sort of things are people doing with that? You know?
This consumer EEG hardware? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Like what other kind of things are people manipulating, or what have you thought of?
You can measure things like focus level. So there's some movements to involve us in education and how kids be actively using this biofeedback to improve their focus in school and that kind of thing. I'm a little bit unsure about how safe that is to use that on a population level, but and you can also measure aspects of people's mood and that kind of thing. So you can imagine like an iPhone app that will measure your mood throughout the day and kind of correlate that with events that are happening in your life or that are on your Instagram or that kind of thing, and have you learn more about how your mood is affected by different things that happen to you throughout the day.
So do you guys have, are you guys gonna make like an app that I can wear that while I'm working and it'll help me?
Well, it actually already exists. I mean, that
My
already
old-
exists. It
My
already
old
exists.
startup is creating something like
Okay,
that.
cool.
It's just-
That's great.
And there is biofeedback therapy. So like,
Yeah.
you learn to like concentrate and focus given external
Yeah.
stimuli.
But that's been going since
People,
the last
yeah,
60s.
this like
Yeah.
biofeedback thing was really big in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
And this is just like higher end, more democratic hardware than
Yeah,
before.
like the difference now is that it doesn't cost $10,000 to do this. You can get these for like $300 online and connect them to your software.
Cool.
It's pretty much at its infancy, this whole like field of like brain and computer music now.
But it definitely fits into that quantified self
Mhm.
kind of thing that, that's going on.
I have a question.
Suzanne?
Can you talk more about the mapping decisions that you made with the filtering, and is there something inherent in more alpha equating with some kind of sonic, equivalent, and just talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Lucier, when he did Music for Solo Performer, his big revelation was the fact that alpha waves are these spikes that happen, and they're like 8 to 12 hertz, which is kind of correlates with like when a percussionist like does a roll on a drum, So it's kind of like at the rhythmic level of like the speed at which events happen. So that's why Music for Solo Performer is like a percussion piece, because he kind of made that connection there. Here we weren't taking the approach where we were like sonifying the waves. You can do that where you take
Just
these
direct
waves
that.
and you just like directly like amplify them into sound so you can hear the brain waves. What we were doing is calculating like a higher order like meaning from what we were measuring, like the overall power that we found in that alpha band, and then using that index to control like an arbitrary
Filter.
musical feature.
In this
So
case, it
was
makes
a
sense too,
filter.
though, it's like more stochastic, more like the same way like it might be going on in your brain activity.
Right.
So I mean, what it sounded like to me, I don't really know what he chose to set, but what it sounded like to me is that as the alpha was increasing, you were actually hearing more information, because the frequency, it was like a low pass filter, and then like the frequency cutoff band was increasing. Was that correct?
Sort of, I just did that in like the phase, like with FFT spectral synthesis rather than as like a filter.
Okay.
So I was taking the spectrum of what we were doing and then sonifying like a FFT of the spectrum based on how much alpha was present. Which makes it sound really new agey. I've lived in New Mexico, right?
Max and Grace, can you guys change the tonal quality of it? So does it always sound sort of like aquatic, or
No, that was just like
What
That was like
creates-
the reverb settings.
yeah,
so you can change it and make it sound?
yeah, it's arbitrary.
It's arbitrary. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's just
We have
not
this-
like how
That
the-
was like a sound design choice. We recorded this album in this like rainbow temple where the reverb length
Probably
was like
20
20
second
seconds or something.
T60 or something.
So we have been like playing with that ever since then, like recreating that space.
Wait, so what's the reverb
electronically.
length here?
So right here, like
We're
it's
just using
probably
a
like a
timer.
third of a second or something. Like you
Yeah.
clap and you hear the song. But in this place, it's like you would clap and then you would hear it like, for 20 seconds or
It's
something.
like a giant echo chamber.
Yeah, it's like an
Crazy
echo
Mr.
chamber.
Walls and like wash rainbows over you while you hang out on top of them.
But
So we recorded an album in that place, and then so ever since we've been doing this stuff with like just a lot of reverb
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. there's room to do other things.
I think it's like we both are really into the work of like Pauline Oliveros and the whole like deep listening band and stuff, so that's probably informing that sound design, just like massive amounts of density. And then stasis. So it's like this is a lot of this is based on like ancient modes and like super dense. Just like here's a static block of ancient modes. Like not everyone's used to hearing equal tempered tunings, but here's just like an ancient, dating back to the Greeks. Here's like a bunch of discrete pitches in an Aeolian, like ancient Greek mode, just like sitting statically, and then we're just kind of like bathing in it and filtering it. But like here's the primal materia of creation or something sonically. That's the metaphor that maybe the Greeks, you see it in like the illustrations of Robert Flood from like the 16th century.
Did you have a question?
No, I guess I'm still.
That's where we're gonna
What? Perfect. I guess I'm still trying to, because I don't know, I know only like pop culture amount of what an alpha wave means, and I guess I'm still trying to figure out whether there is some inherent mapping or an intuitive mapping for alpha being maybe more stochastic or more. I guess I'm just thinking about that. I don't know anything about it, so I'm just.
The interesting thing about alpha and using it as a control stream is that there's like a paradox in there where your alpha increases the less that you do something.
Right.
Yeah, so that was like the thing about like Lucier's piece was that he would go on stage and it was called Music for Solo Performer, and when you're a solo performer, it's just all about like creating this big spectacle, and his piece wouldn't make sound unless he like did nothing, right?
No, I love that.
Yeah, so that's the thing about alpha that's really fun to play with, is that that's why we were just
That's
like,
essentially a
sitting
static
here.
tone at the end.
We're
It's
like-
like a static tone
Yeah.
that you hear and also people aren't used to hearing the subtlety, and we're really good at pitch detection, volume detection. We're not necessarily good, or not everybody's used to just like hearing spectrum spread out like that. So it's like our personal creative decision, like we're gonna do nothing at a static point, and then like here, like can you pick up like, when nothing's happening? Can you kind of hear that gentle undulation where it's just spectrums changing? I'm
So-
not offering you anything.
So it ends up being like a quality change rather than a material change, in a way. Like you're
Which is
hearing-
kind of consciousness in a way. Like, I'm not changing bodies. I'm not jumping into your body when my mind shifts. I'm having a shift of the way I interpret my nowness or something.